Under the City Council Committee of the Whole for the City of Highland Park, Illinois, May 13th, 2024. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ross. Present. Councilmember Tapia.
Present.
Councilmember Littleberg.
Here.
Councilmember Stone. Here. Councilmember Bloomberg.
Here.
Mayor Rotary.
Here, we have quorum. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 24th and May 6th meetings as amended?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. We're going to rearrange our agenda and start with the code of conduct as our person who is talking to us about the lot is stuck in traffic. So with that, how would you like to proceed on the code of conduct conversation?
Well, Mayor, just for the record, there is a staff report in the packet which includes the code of conduct on an annual basis. This code and the protocols for public meetings are shared with the city council. If there are any modifications, it was approved in 2020, and just want to bring it before you this evening. If there are any questions, recommendations, feedback.
Just a quick thank you for going through all the minutes and redoing everything to really capture everything we discussed at our retreat, which really does go over all this, so thank you for all that.
Great, you bet, thank you. This was brought up to me as something that people wanted to talk about, so I'm happy to have that conversation. I hope you've had an opportunity to reread the city's code of conduct. If you haven't, feel free to pull it up and take a look at it now. If there are any, I don't want to call on anybody, but if you want to share your thoughts.
I guess I'll say something.
Sure.
And I mean this for everyone in the community, whether it's constituents, colleagues, staff, just across the board, that I hope that we can respect the fact that we were elected to use our best judgment and that we're all working hard to serve the community. I did write out something that I wanted to say. Any of us might feel delighted with how some of us vote, greatly disappointed in how others vote, angry or happy with all of us. And I deeply respect people's right to protest, but we must, do this in a civil way. And I am concerned that and I said this at a previous council meeting, that a council member told me that for a while they were afraid to walk outside their home, and there were a few residents who were made to feel unsafe in the lobby of our building. I heard, I think through the city manager, that at least one or two people had to be escorted to their car after our meetings, and not just on different occasions for, not the same issue. Name calling and threatening behavior, in my opinion, I'm sure it's everyone in this room feels this way, that it doesn't have a place in City Hall or any of our sister government buildings. And I do wonder, I know we honor free speech, but hateful speech and making somebody feel physically unsafe isn't protected as, protected speech or behavior. And I'm not sure, what steps, we as a city can take to address that, other than, strengthening our code of conduct. Are there, consequences that that are allowed for what I'm describing?
Go ahead.
So just a little clarification, and I appreciate what you're saying. I want to put it into context. The code of conduct is the document that this council adopted to govern how the 7 or however many members you're composed of at the time govern yourselves. Mm-hmm. That's your code of conduct. It's how you interact with each other, how you interact with the residents, and when I say you, I mean the collective you interact with each other, with the staff, with the public. That's your code of conduct. We also have a code that governs public comment and public activity during our open meetings. And that we talked about, and actually in January revised to require standards for decorum and conduct by members of the public. So I just want to make sure, at least I'm understanding, so I can help guide you. If you're talking about public comment from the outside to you and how the public reacts to you, or the way you all.
I did think that code of conduct was everyone's code of conduct.
Yeah, okay.
And that's, you know, what I was addressing. Yeah.
But it's not, if I may, Mayor,
Sure.
Councilmember Ross's comments can still be discussed. I know
Yeah.
the agenda item talks about code of conduct, but I think it's fair because indeed the code of conduct is limited to how the members of the city council interact with each other, staff, and public. But the other document is the rules governing public meetings and our general standards for decorum and conduct. And we did put in that document a requirement for civility. We did put in that document a requirement for respect for the staff and the members of the council. We did put in that document a requirement for that prohibits, rather, unruly behavior. We put in the document that prohibition of interrupting speakers. We put in, and I'm looking for the specific provision of no speaker may engage in conduct or speech that is imminently threatening to any person, that incites violence, or that is obscene. No speaker may engage in conduct that is disorderly and that disrupts or interferes with the ability of the public body to conduct the public meeting. They could be held in violation of our code. If they violate that, they could be dismissed from the meeting, or they could be cited for as a code violation.
Okay, that's all potential consequences. And I'm since I don't know, I mean, I did talk about, back on February 12th when we were all reading our speeches, I talked about hoping that we could talk about codes of conduct, but I wasn't, you know, the one that brought this forward as an agenda item, so I'm not sure what, you know, those who brought it forward, you know, intended to discuss.
Thank you. Well, I know Kim has something to say, but first I wanted to ask Steve, the IML Pledge of Civility, is that something that we've incorporated, or is that? That's what went into.
We use that for our code of conduct.
Okay.
That the members of the city council imposed on itself. We relied heavily on the IML code of conduct. We looked at several other, one or two other neighboring municipalities, and then we looked at some from out of state, and that's what helped us put together the code of conduct that's on the screen right now.
Okay, and I just think it's important to review for the moment, under our guiding principles, C, all members and all city employees will build a capacity to work effectively together by depersonalizing issues, establishing a vision and setting goals, and building team expectations and teamwork, and recognize that the good of the community is greater than the weight of any individual opinion or personal interest. I think that's maybe the point that is catching for some people. Kim?
I just want to say that I really appreciate that we have this code of conduct. I think it's useful. I wish everyone was subject to it, you know, members of the public too. I know that we can't do that, but it just seems that lately in the world, people are not interacting with each other in the way that is described here, that we should be interacting with each other. But I'm glad at least we're trying to set an example for the community with a code of conduct for our own behaviors here.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have anything they want to add on the topic?
Only that, and
Yeah.
I, you know, we're here in Highland Park, and sometimes we look at, you all don't have the ability that I do of seeing a lot of other towns and a lot of other places. I think Councilmember Stone just hit on something, and this is not the incivility and sort of the lack of decorum at public meetings is more of a national issue. And those of you that attended our seminar, our biennial seminar at the Glen, we actually played snippets and videos from around the country of some pretty horrific scenes that took place at meetings. And what subsequent to that, we helped put together our own public comment rules. But I have a unique perspective of seeing, unfortunately, that this is the way public meetings are being conducted, unfortunately, in many different jurisdictions.
There was something in the news that I heard in the last day or so about, I think it was a school board meeting where there was discussion of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and there were people who were able to attend by Zoom, which perhaps in hindsight was not a good idea, who were shouting obscenities and all sorts of things during the meeting, rather, when they had their opportunity for public comment. And so I know we had opportunity to attend meetings by Zoom during the pandemic, and we don't have that anymore, and I think that's probably a good thing. Good thing, given the way people seem to be behaving when they believe they're anonymous.
Yeah, Annette?
I probably should say nothing, but I do have to say I appreciate the fact that it would be nice to control the public. This does not control over the public. We do have a way to do it. It is something that I think you tried from the podium at several times when this may have come up to establish order, and I do think the public got somewhat out of hand. I don't think, there are two incidents in particular, and one actually has somewhat been debunked, so we can't always take things at face value, and I think we all right away assumed, oh my God, this horrible thing happened, and actually it didn't happen. So that's one thing. Between us, I'm glad we have this. I think it is always good to have aspirational things, but frankly, I don't think I can, and I'm grateful, Kim, that you, council member, that you point out that, ours isn't like a lot of other places. But I have to say that I think we didn't behave well. And I'm sorry, but I can't just read this and not take it to heart, because frankly, when I was reading through this, I got very upset, because I do believe that over the past few months, we have not been particularly civil. And so I'm grateful that we revisited this, and I hope it will improve, because my cup is always half full. But I don't think it's good enough to push it off on the public and to not say that we didn't engage in some behavior that probably was not as civil and respectful as it should have been. Because whether it's name calling or whether it's judging someone when they're not present, I don't think that that's civility. And because of it, it's been very upsetting, I think, for all of us in a lot of different ways. But we have these things, we aspire to them, and moving forward, I hope we will live up to them. But I couldn't not let that be said too.
Any other comments?
I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna say that, I suppose this is the right time to talk about it. I could have a, conversation with our city manager, but on different occasions, on different issues before council, unrelated to one another, we're aware of somebody who felt they were harassed somebody who attended a meeting were harassed on the way out, and I just guess at a minimum, just acknowledging that that's a problem, that we don't want people attending meetings to feel unsafe. And know, that, I just had to speak to that. It was a few months ago, I think, but it was something that all of council was alerted to,
Right,
and involved children,
Yeah.
and who we particularly want to feel safe, have them feel safe. So that even if it's just to state it at a public meeting, that this matters to us.
right. I appreciated Ashby's comments, when she said at the end, we're just one community, and we need to all be together as one community. These are our neighbors. These are not our adversaries. We might disagree, but we can do it in a way that is productive and not demeaning and not tearing people down. So, anything else? Is our person here or not yet?
No, but that's okay, we can keep going.
Okay.
Just one moment. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Amanda.
So, Mayor and Council, so the next presentation pertains to the lot in Highland Park. We are seeking your policy feedback as it pertains to the possibility of further infrastructure in that event and meeting space. There is a very comprehensive and detailed staff report that is included in the packet. It provides the history of the lot and how it came to be, and what Amanda Bennett, our communications manager, is going to walk you through. You'll also see that history as well. So we started talking about the possibility of an event space dating more than 4 years ago. Feedback from businesses, from residents, from other guests of Highland Park. And so we had moved forward with council support and implemented an event gathering location. And at a previous city council meeting, we shared with you the proposed plan for 2024. So this evening, we're not going to really talk about the specific events that are planned, since you already had that presentation. But again, we're looking for your policy feedback as it pertains to further infrastructure investment and transforming this parking lot into a more formal gathering space. So Amanda will walk through, and then our colleague from the Lakota group is on his way, so as soon as he comes in, he can continue with the slides summarizing the work that they did.
Thanks.
Thank you. So as City Manager Newkirk said, tonight we are requesting feedback regarding the council's interest in investing in permanent infrastructure at the lot. And as she stated, our approach tonight is to discuss infrastructure, not programming, because the redevelopment of this space would extend beyond the current scope of city programming. So if we advance this project, the lot wouldn't just be a space for events, but it would be a year-round gathering space for the community. As enjoyable a destination, we hope, when it's programmed as when it's unprogrammed. So that's where we're headed. Tonight we'll be sharing the podium, as Gita said, with Kevin Clark of the Lakota Group. But we'll start off with a staff presentation, and then Kevin will take us through the 4 points you see here regarding the Lot 2.0. So we'll talk about the design process, community engagement, and then he'll walk us through both the concept designs that you've seen as part of the staff report and the associated cost proposals. Okay, so it is tempting to think of the lot as what brought back the taste of Highland Park. But that's not the whole story, though we do look forward to seeing all of you at the Taste on June 21st and June 22nd. The goal of the lot has always been economic vitality alongside the creation of a gathering space and home for city-sponsored events. There are 4 key aspects to keep in mind as we discuss the lot. So number 1, improve economic vitality through intentional placemaking, by which we mean by programming this space, whether temporary or permanent, we want to encourage local spending, promote tourism, and foster a sense of community. Number 2, we want to increase foot traffic and enhance community vibrancy. Third, we'd like to provide opportunities for Highland Park businesses to promote themselves and reach new clientele they wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to reach. And lastly, we want to enhance our appeal to prospective business owners or site selectors who are considering Highland Park as a location for their business. So that begs the question, why the North St. John's lot? As part of the planning process, staff identified a number of attributes specific to the lot in downtown Highland Park that made it uniquely suited to supporting these dual goals of economic development and community vibrancy. Several are highlighted here, including accessibility, positioning on the east side of downtown, the flexibility of the space, so we could do lots of different types of events there, as well as visibility to commuters and pedestrians. So proximity to the Metro line is advantageous for multiple reasons, and if the city did pursue this project, Highland Park would join other North Shore communities with multi-purpose green spaces or event plazas in their downtown districts along the train line. You've probably all visited parks in Winnetka, Wilmette, Northbrook, Lake Forest that have different types of spaces all situated in close proximity to the railroad. So these characteristics facilitated the temporary installation and repurposing of the parking lot into an event space. But a temporary installation is not financially viable in the long term because of the costs associated with critical elements like rental of the stage, setup, tear down, maintenance, and storage of all of those infrastructure items like tables and chairs and tents, as well as the staffing costs related to event setup and management. And additionally, while feedback on events has overall been positive, community members continue to call out certain immutable characteristics of the lot as it currently stands that are kind of detrimental to their enjoyment of the events. These include the lack of green space, the lack of shade, and the excessively hot asphalt. I can attest to that as someone whose sandals were melted during the Taste of Highland Park. Additional information regarding the siting of the lot, as well as alternative locations that we considered, are available in the staff report. So if you have not had a chance to read it, please do log in to our Agenda Center and take a look. So we have prepared an overview of the planning timeline for this project, and as City Manager Newkirk stated, planning for the lot actually began back in 2020 when staff and BDAG members discussed the desire to create an alfresco dining and entertainment space in downtown Highland Park. You might remember the Roger Williams installation that summer during the pandemic that was really popular. Planning continued in earnest in 2021 during the Business Development and Strategic Planning focus groups, which I know many of you participated in, as well as members of the community at large who weighed in on ideas and strategies to kickstart that post-pandemic recovery and also think about long-term economic development goals for the city as a whole, but downtown Highland Park in particular. Focus group participants, as you see on the screen, highlighted events as a way to differentiate Highland Park, underscore our identity as an arts-focused community, and provide desirable weekend or evening entertainment. In undertaking this planning process, we joined other Illinois communities that have invested in green gathering spaces to host events and accommodate unprogrammed year-round enjoyment. So not just for the events that they plan, but for people to enjoy as a park-like space when there aren't events planned. And you've, I'm sure, have visited some of them, Everts Park in Highwood, Hubbard Woods Park in Winnetka, as well as some others that we've done some research into, such as 95th Street Community Plaza in Naperville and Festival Park in Elgin. Planning for the inaugural season in 2022 began in earnest in fall 2021. The city went to bid for an event manager, received council approval for that contract in early 2022. Infrastructure improvements, including the resurfacing of the entire lot, thanks to our dedicated team at Public Works, as well as the expansion of electric access, were completed in spring of 2022. And the lot hosted its first event, which was the Taste of Highland Park, in June 2022. Following positive feedback from community members and business owners, in December of 22, we went to bid for a firm to provide landscape design services for the potential permanent build-out of the lot, and that's the process that the Lakota Group will be reporting on today. Okay. So let's talk about the impact of the lot. The temporary installation at the lot has focused on city-sponsored events. So while we did say this will not be the sole focus of this presentation, we did want to highlight some of those impacts. So we have that kind of in the back of our minds as a reference point. So the past 2 years have featured several highly successful, now recurring events, such as the Taste of Highland Park, Oktoberfest, and Stews and Brews, which is now Stews and Brews, and booze and blues, I think. Overall attendance at events at the lot is estimated at 50,000 visitors over the past 2 years. In these pilot years, because that's what we're kind of viewing this as an iterative process where we are learning and growing and evaluating from season to season, we've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work in this space. For example, the city heard overwhelming community feedback that there was interest in a weekly, nightly event series at the lot, something that would give people something to do downtown, not on the weekends, during the weekdays. So in year one, we hosted Takeout Tuesdays with live music and on-site vendors, and we encouraged people to bring takeout from area businesses and enjoy it at the lot. It was inspired by the success of Food Truck Thursdays in the Ravinia District. But attendance lagged throughout the season, and in year two, we said, well, let's refocus this weekly event into the artisan market. So we partnered with Bensadoon USA, which is the vendor that organizes the food trucks that are on site at Food Truck Thursdays, to present the artisan market. And we faced similar issues, right? People who were there enjoyed it, but we faced lagging attendance. So this year we've reconceptualized it, as I know our marketing coordinator, Diane Larson, explained at length a couple meetings ago, I think. We're working with Bensadoon to reconceptualize that market to the French market, again, incorporating all the things that we know that people want. And we'll continue to evaluate and optimize the events hosted in this space. And if we do move forward with a permanent installation, we know that the way that we present these events could change again. For example, sticking with these weekly events, perhaps there will be a community interest in a weeknight event once the issues with the temporary infrastructure are resolved, lack of green space and shade structures chief among them. But we also know that there's an interest in quantifying the impact of the lot on our businesses. And businesses and other organizations operating in the economic development space recognize the value that intentional placemaking, in this case through the green redevelopment of an underutilized asphalt space, can bring to a community. Recognizing the value of events towards tourist and local spending, in 2022, the city successfully applied for $140,000 in grant funding from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, and has reapplied for that grant, I think, for more money this year as well. It underscores that this is a strategy that's a recognized best practice for long-term economic health. It is not possible, however, to quantify the direct impact on individual businesses through sales tax data. Sales tax data is provided quarterly and can be a lagging indicator based on each business's reporting. We go into a little bit more detail in the staff report on that point. We tried to gather data, though. That didn't mean that we didn't try. In 2022, in partnership with the Downtown Highland Park Alliance, businesses in Downtown Highland Park were invited to participate in a coupon booklet. So visitors to the lot were given a coupon code that could then be used to track how many attendees made purchases at HP businesses following their visit to the lot. But this was too difficult for businesses to consistently implement and track, and the Alliance was not able to gather the data that they desired. So unfortunately, we did give it a try, but we weren't able to gather that data. However, we did just recently subscribe, as you all know, to new software called Placer.ai, which generates visit reports to a given geographical area based on the number of visits or pings from people's cell phones. And you can specify both the area and the time frame. So the data you see both in the staff report and on the screen represents visits to 2nd Street between Central and Elm Place during the Taste of Highland Park in 2023, as compared to the same time period in 2019. And we chose that stretch of 2nd Street because we wanted to be able to visualize the the traffic patterns of people through the downtown during an event period. We didn't want to capture, the people who were in the immediate vicinity of the lot because they might have just been there for the event. We were interested in looking comparatively at how busy that area was during an event and not during an event. And the reason why we chose 2019, of course, was that that was our last pre-pandemic typical year. If we had gone to 2020 or 2021, those would have been atypical in terms of foot traffic. So, considerations before we hear from Kevin at the Lakota Group. We've included several bullet points here for you to just keep in the back of your mind as you discuss the potential permanent build-out of the lot, including the reduction in available parking spaces for general use and for special events. the city's capacity to provide long-term event programming in that space. And then, of course, the reevaluation of the event lineup in the redesigned space. And this is not a comprehensive list, but these are just some things for you to keep in mind when Lakota starts walking us through their proposed designs. I would also want to note any loss of parking is a consideration for access to businesses as well as for special events and like the Portland Arts Festival, Ravinia Festival. So we want to mention that too. We are cognizant of impacts to our businesses. With that, I'm happy to maybe start talking about some of the items on Lakota's list.
Advisement for why you should take the train.
That's right. Is it going to let me click or do I have to bug you? Because it's a PDF. Oh, sorry. Can you switch me to the next slide? Oh, whoops. Go scroll up just a little bit more.
You might have to zoom out a little bit, Ashley.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, so the Lakota group, I know many of you interacted with Lakota as part of the planning process. Sorry, oh, the microphone, I'm so sorry. I know many of you interacted with the Lakota group as part of the planning process. And I know that you've already heard this introduction, so I'm going to go briefly through it. But the first phase of their design process, after they did that initial community engagement period, which we'll talk about in more detail in a second, was to present schematic designs. So those were the 5 designs that you either saw presented at the ice cream social that we did at Wayfarer Theaters, at one of the pop-up events that they hosted during the summer of 2023, or via the online survey. So they collected feedback based on those 5 preliminary concepts and then whittled it down to 2 refined concepts that took into consideration the most commonly requested features of the 5 other designs. So they listened to that feedback, refined it further, and presented 2 concepts. Those were the ones that you were invited to weigh in on via a digital survey earlier this year, or the in-person installation here at City Hall. And all of that is informing what they're calling preferred concept number 1, which is an overall plan for redeveloping both the north and south ends of the lot to create this multi-purpose dynamic green space / event plaza. Can you scroll for me? Or if it's that mouse, I can do it. Do you want me to do it? Thank you. Okay, so stakeholder engagement. These are a representative sample of the groups that Lakota conducted their focus groups with, including a full session with the Business and Economic Development Advisory Group. They spoke with realtors, property owners. There was a council focus group, as well as our partners who were either involved as businesses participating in these events, nonprofits who have been part of events at the lot, and other community stakeholders.
I just want to know how many were involved, and
So-
if these are separate sessions.
These were separate sessions. They were conducted in person, but we did have a virtual opportunity, and we had about 65 participants across all of the different focus groups that were conducted.
So if there were 8 sessions, there were 65 people total.
Yes, these are just the focus groups. Then they did some pop-up workshops. So you may have seen the Lakota group hanging out with us at the Taste of Highland Park, at the Artisan Market, or at Food Truck Thursdays, where they invited people to come up, share their ideas, weigh in on what those designs look like, and get a feel for why they were attending these events, where they came from, what attracted them here. One of the interesting data points that they shared with us was that they encountered, particularly at the Taste of Highland Park, a number of people who were outside Highland Park. So there are pop-up workshops. We hosted an in-person ice cream social at Wayfarer Theaters that had about 45 participants. This was really neat because the team at Lakota was able to walk all of the attendees through each of the different concept designs and kind of guide them towards giving us that more detailed feedback that is incorporated into the final plans. We also conducted 2 virtual open houses via online surveys. I see you, via 2 online surveys. That second orange one is for that second round of surveys that I mentioned earlier, where we were looking just at 2 designs, not all 5. Councilmember Littlewer.
No.
Okay.
I was all excited.
Okay, so what did they hear? The way that Lakota has organized these slides focuses on the 3 types, like the elements that are really important to people. These are not illustrated drawings of what this would look like. These are representative of the feedback that they heard. So they heard that people wanted something that felt organic, that wasn't too structured. They wanted something that was light and open and airy. If there were shade structures, they wanted them to be retractable so that we could think about the weather and how it impacts our events. So again, as we're looking at this, these are representative. They're not how they are. Diving into those shade structures, because this was one of the most common requests, as I'm sure you can imagine, you've all been to events at the lot, we need shade. Looking down here at some other items. So restrooms, one of the disadvantages of the temporary installation is the porta potties, for want of a better word. So it's not surprising that that was high on the list. It makes it more accessible for families and people who need more space. A performance stage. So having a performance stage that's capable of hosting national acts. I know when marketing coordinator Larson presented with you, she was probably really excited to tell you about the bands that we have coming to the Taste of Highland Park. I am very excited about 9 Days in Dishwalla. So we need a stage, Spin Doctors, those 2. So we need a stage that can support acts of that caliber, that can handle their sound and light requirements. We also heard that that community members were interested in having spaces for our vendors. So one of the benefits of coming to events at the lot is that you get to engage with Highland Park businesses in a different way. They have specialty menus. For example, when the Michael's food truck is on site, they have these really awesome little potato puffs that are just delicious. We also heard from people that they were interested in multi-use structures where the storage was incorporated into the building, so that those are not quite separate and unsightly the way that they are now. They'd be integrated into the design. We heard about catenary lights, which I promise I did not weigh the scale on this one, even though everyone knows that those lights are my dream. We also heard about a lot of interactive elements, whether that is interactive play elements for kids, an interactive sculpture design that could double as both a work of art and an interactive play piece for kids. Set up for outdoor games. You may remember from our first installation of the lot that we had full-scale chess and checkers and bocce. And then we also heard about some fun things. What could we put in the space to be more engaging? Maybe some digital installation. And then we also heard, it's one of the most overwhelming things, we also heard a desire to be nature-focused. That whatever the design was, there was an understanding that there needs to be a paved plaza-like area, but there should also be green space, that people are looking for more open, unprogrammed areas. Something like these play mounds over here. Places where people could bring their kids. It's not necessarily a playground, but where the kids could explore. Additionally, we also heard, unsurprisingly to anyone who's been to Stews and Brews, we heard that people want more fire pits. They want more of the infrastructure elements that we have now that support gathering together. Additional tables and chairs, creating different spaces. So a lounge area instead of just the tables that we have. Different ways for people to engage. On this slide, they have a summary of some of the direct feedback that we heard. You know, and I think this is probably not a surprise from all of the different reports that you've read. We want more live music. We want something that's more interactive. We want something that is year-round. So even if the city were not programming it year-round, a space that's available and welcoming. Right now, when the lot isn't in season, it is a former parking lot that's cordoned off. People enjoyed the flexibility. I'm not going to go in detail through these, but these are examples of how Lakota conducted that survey. So they would ask people, if you were designing the lot, what would it look like? And people were guided to talk about what do those elements look like, whether it's a shade structure. All right. And I am very, very delighted to be able to turn this over to Mark from the Lakota group. Thanks.
You did great, Amanda.
Yeah, you did great.
We are scrolling through the presentation with the mouse, and then you need to talk into the mic.
Bring it back to where he was. Okay.
There we go.
Maybe a little bit of zoom in there.
Thanks. I apologize. I've been in the car for 2 hours. There were 2 wrecks. So I am here now, and thanks for stepping in there. I appreciate that. I see where Amanda is. Okay, so as we were surveying people to get a feel for what they wanted to see. So we were asking people to kind of build their own public space out of stuff that we had heard already that people wanted to see. So we had a list of elements, public spaces, public amenities and spaces, nature and green areas, special features, interactive elements, and people were responding to these. And this is a couple of examples of, where somebody had was really interested in the public amenities and spaces like a performance stage or open outdoor seating or a restaurant, cafe, or the Bosque area, whereas somebody else may have been more interested in, having a grove or play mounds or shade structures. So we were building these ideas, and ultimately from the survey, this is kind of the summary of the survey, that shows kind of the top elements that came out of that process. So the idea that people really wanted a lot of outdoor seating, restrooms was a big thing. You're going to build a public space, lots of families, lots of kids, lots of events, public restrooms that are permanent as part of the project, performance stage, flexible lawn space so you can do a lot of different things, whether it's during an event or on a daily basis. Nature and green areas, some of the big things there, native gardens and plants, people brought that up a lot. I think sustainability is a big part of this, and thinking about how we can make it as sustainable as possible. A tree grove, people repeatedly told us it's really hot. In the summer, we're having these events, there's not a lot of shade. Can we have more trees? Even in our concepts, as we were showing concepts that we had down in City Hall, one of the comments was, more trees, more trees. So we were getting this feedback so that we understood as we developed the final concepts that trees are important, shade's important, comfort is important. And then some of the other elements like interactive elements like a water feature, people kind of shied away from splash pad, what you would think of as kind of a play feature, but more of like a architectural element, something you can get close to, maybe the sound, maybe touching it. Something that might be more visual and comforting in that way. And then other specialty features like a shade structure and making sure, that was like a big one that we had something that was maybe when it was even raining like now, you have a little bit of cover or something like that. So using these elements, we developed a preferred concept, and that concept has been refined a few times. I'm going to walk through it. And this is the preferred concept for the whole site, not if we were going to do maybe a phased approach or keep part of the site undeveloped or as it is. So the elements that you see on the plan, the big part of this, and things that came out really early in the discussion was how do we integrate St. John's? Is there a way to make that feel like it's part of the plaza? Right now, the challenges are it's very long and narrow space, which kind of hinders you. And so part of that was, can we think about how parking works in St. John's? Can we integrate St. John's across and even maybe close St. John's off at certain times for the bigger events and be able to scale this up and down? So that was part of the concept, and you'll see that we're implying, paving could come across the street. And this line here is where the parking is now. So we've incorporated the parking into the plaza space. Another big part of that is thinking about how the stage is sited. And so giving it a little bit more breathing room from the existing memorial, which is right here, and pushing it so that we create almost a plaza space. A big part, and you guys are doing right now, is you've got 2nd Street happening, you got Port Clinton. How do we integrate this into that and make it feel like this is all the connective tissue of downtown? So just thinking about the permeability and the connection to Central now, and that you would actually have walkways that come from Central and places to get from Central into the space, and an arrival point that maybe is behind the stage building, but you could think about this as being almost a focal point element, and then pathways that wind their way through the site. We heard a lot about organic. Should we keep going, or do we take questions along the way? Or?
Sure. So sorry.
Yeah.
I think I misunderstood when I was looking at this on my own. From your picture, is St. John's in the middle there?
Yeah, St. John's is right here. We had to turn it just to present this. This is St.
Okay.
John's that goes along this way. Central is on the left, and Elm Place is up here. And I think from the 3Ds you'll be able to see
No,
a
that's
little
great.
better
I
too.
just didn't realize that was.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. It's hard to present something that's so long and narrow on, and everything
That's
is.
great, thank you. I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah. From that stage, and the idea of creating a nice, sizable, flexible, open green space that would connect to it, a lawn area in between with a shade structure that would oversee the lawn area. So a lot of the activity happening here, and this could be its own focal point element. It could be something that provides a little bit of shade, but also cover, and could have some color, and could be really interesting in its own way. And then to the bathrooms, which are back here, and a storage building, which, as we know, maintenance is a big thing. So the first thing the public works and engineer guys ask me is like, oh, where do we store things, and how do we do this? So as you know, as we think about all of the stuff that might be in the place, in the lot, movable furniture and elements like that ultimately, like, we might want to put away and store. So just thinking about that. And as we work our way north, this area is a tree grove or a bosque, where you could have events and smaller events or markets. We kind of show this diagram down here to show where tents could be. So not necessarily the all-in big event where you always have all tents and you close down the street, but you could see what you could do if you close down the street. And you could have a small market here, and we'll show an image of that in a second. And then as you move toward the north, toward Elm, where it's a little bit, quieter, and you've got neighborhoods, just more of the like a sculpture garden and areas where there could be maybe kids interactive sculptures and stuff like that, and some century gardens and some landscape. So we're showing this idea of it's just being more organic and a place that you can walk through. It's kind of a secondary entrance. So we have a few images that were kind of preferred that go with this, just when we talk about that stage building, what that could be. We've added on the back, we've thought about, you probably want a little green room, you want a little storage, you're going to have an electrical room in that building on the back side. The bathroom buildings, as we talk about this fountain, this was an image that really resonated with people, and they really liked this versus some of the other stuff that we're showing that was a little bit more interactive or bigger feature. The idea that we'd have seat walls, very flexible, lots of places for people to be, and other kinds of seating, and the idea that St. John's would be integrated, and we just show that, how to integrate that street, and maybe how it could feel if you close it off. Where the sculpture garden would be, just images again. The bosque of trees or the tree grove and the shade structure, that event space or that kind of open space, flexible green, and outdoor dining with movable furniture. So just places for people to be. So we developed a few images that'll help, I think, understand, and hopefully this helps answer the question, because I know people look at plans and it's like, wait, where is everything, and how is this relating? Where's the scale? And so we developed 5 of these renderings to depict 3D and just bring it to life a little bit. And in the foreground, we're kind of hovering above Central here, looking to the north. The tracks are along here, behind some buffering of landscape. This is what I was talking about before, as far as how do we get some more permeability and access into the space, celebrate and improve the memorial. Maybe there's a little seat wall that really hugs right here so you can be in that space. What we called the Fountain Plaza on the backside of that stage building, and then the open space lawn. Treating the street and but having openings. I mean, one of the first things we heard was, right now you've got overgrown shrubs and no visibility and no access. And so just having these points where you can get back and forth in between the space, and you can imagine if you close this off, you've just got that movement, and you've got these places to be, and you can walk all the way from north, south, east, west, but these large areas of landscape. Right now, it's essentially all paved, and I think I did a calculation. We at least increased the permeable surface by like a half an acre on the site just by doing this. So to me, that's starting to talk about and build a narrative for a more sustainable future for the site. We can do native plants. We can do, we're implying that you could do permeable pavers. I mean, that all comes out when you start doing detailed design, but just the idea of let's build this as something that's sustainable and fits what you guys want to achieve in the long run.
Kim, did you?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, two quick questions.
Yeah.
So the sidewalk is gone and it's in the site now?
Yeah, we brought it inbound, so you have a wide pathway that connects all the way north-south there.
And are you envisioning the street itself with colored concrete or something? That's shown there?
Yeah, we're implying that it would be nice to be able to bring a treatment, whatever that paving is, across the street. So whether it's colored concrete or like a paver across, and that way it reads as a continuous or a site, like one big plaza space.
Thank you.
And it's not the most critical element, but it's an element that is in the vision right now.
Tony?
What kind of trees are you talking about wanting to plant throughout this plan that you have?
I mean, there would be a variety. I mean, you start with natives like oaks and maples, and you build from there. I mean, you'd have shade trees, you'd have ornamentals. Depending on if you're going to have them along the street, those are going to be probably shade trees in that area. We could. We're lining that lawn with a nice arching tree. Maybe that's an elm or something like that. So you want a variety. You want a mixture. You don't want to create a monoculture. We don't want to have that situation where ashes are getting decimated. American elms are decimated. So it's that idea. And then once you get into the detailed design, then you do a planting plan specifying that.
I certainly agree that you don't want to do all of the same tree, but in terms of size of tree and longevity, we have an opportunity here where you don't have underground infrastructure like plumbing and electrical that you do in the downtown.
Sure.
So you have an opportunity to place trees that are over time going to develop very big trunks and a very big amount
Root system,
of
yeah.
overhang and shade.
Yes.
Which I think, unfortunately, is also going to interfere with some of the uses you're talking about. But I think it's very important to have, as part of the green space, not just low planting, but big shading plants that create a sense of permanence.
This is just
Absolutely.
a conceptual plan too,
Yeah.
so
Understood.
if we moved it forward, our selected contractor would certainly work with our forestry staff and put together a scope before a landscape plan is developed. But good point.
I
Yeah.
understand. You've talked about a lot of different kinds of
Yeah.
uses that are possible here, but one of the big issues is, what do we want it to physically feel like and look like? And that at some point is going to dictate the uses.
How much is gathering space versus
Right.
passive recreation versus
Exactly.
transition versus
100%,
utility?
yeah.
Oh, Andres?
Yes, sir.
On the stage, have you done or considered more band shells that are just going to be more acoustically effective and more protective of the musicians and their equipment, as well as it helps mitigate some of the noise and create a better listening experience.
Sure, and I think that's the next level thing. As a plan, we want to spatially find the best place for it. We want to appropriately size it. And then, hey, we're going to get into detailed design. We're going to have an architect, and we're going to find the right character. We want it to feel right in downtown. I know that's a big piece of your culture is architecture. You guys span from great traditional architecture to mid-century modern. You've got a lot, so that'll be a key element as we keep going on this. Yeah.
Annette, oh, sorry, Tony and then Annette.
I just wanted to follow up on what Councilmember Tapia pointed out or talked about with respect to the band shell. And I know I'm putting the cart before the horse a little bit. You're facing that band shell in a direction where there are residences that are going to be affected by noise. Because of the length, this probably won't work, but I wonder if we can figure out a way to face that band shell westward. It's going to eliminate getting direct access of music to at least half of this lot, but putting the band shell in a place where it faces west and perhaps dedicating the lot to the band shell and those kinds of uses that can function in that space may be important, because there are residences at the corner of Elm and St. John's, and there are residences further down on St. John's that are going to be affected by that. They've been affected by various special events that are not necessarily as noisy as a band.
Well, they're potentially planning to have one directly across the street.
Right.
So,
Good point.
yeah, Annette?
I just wanted to say that what I do really love is this sidewalk being inside, because right now the sidewalk's like a border, it almost like cuts it off. And then when we have those large plantings, you can't even see how you're gonna sneak in there. And I mean, I've had people say, oh, do I have to walk all the way to the north, or can I sneak? And when they wanted to do it by the memorial and the bands were set up over there, you know, they just didn't want them going through the cords and everything. So people couldn't get in. And we want this to be so welcoming that I think that I'd really like to see lower bushes or whatever on the actual periphery, not by the train tracks, but on St. John's, so that it's all welcoming, but I like that the sidewalk is not in there, so that's really good. But short term, I think we could get rid of some of those bushes if we're doing things this summer, so we didn't have that same problem in terms of people not being able to get in. Like, they want to see in.
Right.
So just, I don't know.
Andres?
Yeah, another reason why to the inside sidewalk is when there are no events, we're creating a sort of a walking experience of just getting back and forth between north and south. You know, you're walking through this beautiful place as opposed to just the traditional sidewalk, right?
Right.
So I think that adds to the richness of it that goes beyond just an event experience.
Absolutely. I mean, that was definitely the thinking. We explored a few different locations and orientations for the stage, and to get people's opinions on that, and the people that are holding the events, they really preferred this. I think the acoustical design is a really important part of this as we get into it, to make sure that it is appropriate for the site.
Facing south.
Do you want to go ahead, or do you want to let,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask,
yeah,
are we, because I feel like,
we've like
could we hear
a
the?
handful of slides?
Yeah, there's a few more. Just putting you in different parts of the lot. This is the bosque or the tree grove, or maybe, we're just depicting, maybe it's a Saturday or Sunday morning. There's a few tents, there's a few food trucks where you can have coffee or get some food, and there's seating in the area. There's movable seating and furniture. So it's just like more of a passive time. It's not all about the events. Trying to remind people. I know we go straight to what's happening now, but this is all about creating a place for people to come together in the community at all times, year round. So thinking about that, showing that, this shows kind of that, we call the Fountain Plaza, whether or not there's a fountain or not, that's to be determined, but just the character of that, we're kind of behind us is central, so you can kind of feel that permeability coming into the space. The back of maybe the stage building could be treated in a way that's interesting, and it doesn't have to be the backside, even though you still want to have service to drop off equipment and to, be able to get behind there for the, access. But this just gives you a feel, seat walls, seats with backs, different furniture, can be activated at different times, and really, I think, energizes Central. It's such an important street. You're not that far from Port Clinton, so to me, that's important. This just depicts that view from the shade structure toward the stage building, the larger open space area, flexible. We've depicted certain types of trees that we think would be appropriate. But that just gives you the view of what it would look like if you were in that location. And then one that's kind of hovering near the corner of Elm and St. John's, and kind of the more passive, organic part of the park or the lot. So you would potentially have interactive sculptures. People really didn't. As we got into it, it wasn't about having a playground. They wanted to have playful elements. They wanted their families to be able to go there, but not be all about the kids. So it kind of moved away from having a play area, because we did show some concepts that had that, and ultimately that was not preferred as we got into it.
No, we're not doing questions. I mean, we're gonna finish, will you?
No.
Oh, okay, because Yumi's not.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I'm almost there. So we wanted to scale back and show if there was a smaller bite, how would we do that? This is depicting that existing lot, on part of the existing lot on the north, the parking lot there. We've shown 45 cars still there, a new access point. So this part hasn't been touched. So if you were going to do a phase one, or if you were going to do a lighter touch, this has all of those elements, the highest elements essentially, except for the bosque, which people really love, this tree grove. It's not part of that initial piece, but it has the stage, the flexible open space, the shade, the bathrooms, and that connection to Central. So that was kind of our initial take at how you could bridge from phase one into a full build out.
Cool, thank you.
And we showed how you would do events there, or you could do events.
Yeah,
And then numbers, this is part of your packet. That phase one, 6 point, my eyes are terrible, they're really dry.
6.6.
6.6 to 8.3. So, and again, these are budgets, this is conceptual. So as you get into it, hey, what are the big ticket items? We start to think about the stage building and what it wants to be. Let's find the right balance of where you guys want to be.
Sounds good. Well, great, thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I was late.
Nope, we appreciate that you made it. Yumi, did you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, with all, due respect for the hard work that went into this plan, I know that, the CODA group was tasked with something that, before I joined city council, I did not vote on this, and tasked with making, as nice a site as possible. I'm gonna warn you that I have quite a few notes based on the staff write-up. But looking at some of these images, the scale seems off to me. Like the Vietnam Memorial, I think is taking up more room. It somehow, the renderings are sort of portraying this as a vast open space that I don't feel is quite accurate. You've kind of minimized the railroad. You don't really see it in the rail in any of the renderings, and that's a significant piece in all of this. But at the top of my notes, I know that in the staff report that Port Clinton Square was mentioned, at the maximum number of people that you could have in there was roughly, I want to say the number was 350 in the staff report, and to my mind that's really all you need. I'm still very committed to the, Port Clinton Square idea. And I'm going to go into why. First of all, it was the city center. It was built to be the city center, and I think most people think of it that way. In my opinion, building out this site is really going to further divide the central business district, not bring it together. And it's not in order. I wrote these things down as they came to me. I've only met him once, maybe twice, but the Ravinia Festival CEO mentioned to me last year, shortly after I got seated, that parking is an issue for Ravinia, and they are concerned about losing the parking there in the lot. I had a chance to catch up with not only a stakeholder, but the current president of the board of the Chamber of Commerce, who shared that among businesses that have left, that the last straw for a home furnishing store in Sheridan and near Central was the opening of the lot 2 years ago. They relocated to Hubbard Woods, and that the chamber in general considers, and I'm trying to find a polite way to put it, the idea of the lot as really not good at all. It is, I think it sounded like there's a fair amount of eye rolling, at least among the businesses. And you've talked a bit about my question. You've talked a bit about it. What do you do when there's no activity? Winter, the landscaping will make no difference little difference in the winter months. It'll be dormant. Staff reported just now about quite a number of the visitors being not Highland Parkers. I feel that even if vitality is the goal, I'd rather not be spending money just to entertain out-of-town visitors who are not spending money in Highland Park. I think that the lot as a site is too big and too long. It will not knit the east and west sides of the train tracks together. No matter what you do to build out the site, you can still only cross it at the existing crossings on Central and Elm Place. And I think, and I don't see this as a viable option, moving the Vietnam Memorial, but without moving it, and first of all, with all due respect to the veterans that I don't want to upset,
Right.
and also the cost of it, right. It seems to me kind of pointless to do this. To my mind, is the staff report referenced the economic development pillar, and after advocating personally for the economic development to remain a pillar, it troubles me that that's being used to justify spending millions of dollars on something that I don't believe will help the economy. I've heard overwhelmingly in my conversations, with exception of maybe one, business owner, that there aren't positive benefits to businesses, and no matter what you do, you're still, unlike Hubbard Woods, where one side of the park is just a long row of businesses. This just faces a series of banks for the most part, and we've had a couple of years now to see what happens at the lot, and I will be frank in saying that I think it's been not terribly successful for the amount of energy and staff time that has gone into it, and businesses that I talked to feel that it's drawing people away from them, including the Arts Center, by the way, and that they're forced to put staff in the lot or lose out. And I honestly feel that this cannot be, in terms of a site, the best that Highland Park can do. And there were, as far as the surveys are concerned, just a tip on the surveys, a business owner said to me that they hadn't seen it, and a number of businesses said they hadn't seen it, that it should have come from the city It may have come from the Lakota group, I'm not sure, but they just didn't see it to fill it out. And
It's from the city, though.
it was from the city. Well, there were a lot of people who just haven't seen it. You know, what, are there similar initiatives in neighboring cities? I know the staff report referred to them, but, you know, I guess there's Hubbard Woods, but that's not directly against the train tracks. There is a buffer, you know, of land and parking there.
And that's like a park, right? I mean, I don't know that they,
It is a park,
they have the
yeah.
skating rink and they have the playground. I don't know.
Also not terribly active one as far as I can see. It's generally pretty empty. And I think, you know, you've got, interestingly, you know, if you've ever everybody's visited Wilmette, they're obviously doing quite well. They've got a band at the intersection of some major streets and just tons of activity, you know, around that band, or the bands that they put there. And my, you know, I think the data is certainly critical. Staff said that you couldn't really look at the sales tax. I think that's something that I would like to see. You know, where is the evidence, the data that's showing that there's an uptick? Because I'm not hearing it from businesses, and this is just an incredible amount of money to invest, as one stakeholder said, good money after bad. And you know, I know that Lakota Group feels that it's interacted with various stakeholders. As a city council member, you know, I had maybe a half hour, you know, visit with them, which I appreciated, but that was the full extent of my interaction with them. I assume that you know, everyone else on council had about half an hour to an hour and hasn't interacted with them since. I do not mind the idea of constructing bathrooms. I think that could be quite useful. I don't mind, you know, a water element, but I think this, I'm absolutely convinced of it, and I feel like I feel quite agitated about it, actually, that this is the wrong place to invest $6 to $8 million, that we could use, we'd certainly use the money in other ways, and we obviously have public works building that we're looking at building, and you know, other facilities that we need to build, and there are other investments, whether it's marketing, you know, that we could be doing, and I just I'm trying to think if I've exhausted all of the you know, that is you know, my take on this, and again, with all due respect, you know, you put together, you know, a very nice presentation, and you did exactly what, you know, you should do when you're hired to, you know, and tasked with what can you do with Port Clinton Square, but the task wasn't to say, you know, would another site work better? The task was, how do you make this one look as nice as possible? And a lot of the imagery, you know, you share are, you know, pretty and you know, attractive ones. They're you know, the first part of the presentation, they're all samples of other people's, you know, work that look tantalizing, but they're largely, you know, quite a few of these examples not doable in the lot. And you know, of course it's hot. It was a parking lot. It was a parking lot, and you know, to me, and I've used this analogy before, not with regards to this particular project, but it is a square, fitting a round object in a square hole. It doesn't, to my mind, want to be there, and you know, that's just deeply, deeply concerning to me. Again, it just physically can't knit the east and west sides of the tracks. It just
Because it's
can't.
north and south.
And,
I understand.
you know, it's facing, Bankers Row. You know, I'm all for investing, but $8 million is a ton of our money. I think, either a fraction of that could be invested. The other piece of it is that it is certainly a prime location. This has been brought, well, I don't know to what extent I can talk about this, but I am certain that council has discussed developments, you know, possible public-private. There are a number of different kinds of developments that could occur there that, you know, might be townhomes or something else. And we need to, that I think we need to consider in the context of a master plan, which I'm happy that we are looking at in 2025. But to lock us in it at such a high price tag to this location is, to me, for me, and I'm sorry to use this word, but it feels like an irresponsible use of the money. And again, you did a very fine presentation, so it's that, you know, it was a, you know, nice looking thing. You did what you were asked to do. But again, I think this is just the wrong site, and thank you for hearing me out.
No, appreciate the thoughtful comments. I think Gita wants to respond in terms of the financial piece, and then Kim, and then Andres.
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember Ross. So just with the financial piece, and I know certainly it's sticker shock, and this is not contemplated anywhere as a priority 1 or 2 in our capital budget. But there are, as noted, so there are grant opportunities that could offset about 80% of the costs. And so we have talked to other communities for park, recreational, entertainment projects. There's the possibility of grant funding. So just keep that in mind in terms of the total dollar amount. But I guess the question also, and I realize it's hard to separate it, but really just the policy question is, would be a permanent loss of a parking lot.
Exactly.
So that definitely needs to be balanced with, do you want to see a revitalization of this site potentially for this purpose? So I guess that's kind of really the first policy question. And then if that is a yes, we'd like to explore this, know that our task would be to go back and look at grant opportunities and other things to see if that's even viable.
There was one other piece that I'm now remembering. I mean, yes, it's a large price tag, and maybe you can offset it with grants, but it is the loss of, you know, this really opportunity of this, whether it's a parking lot or some other development, locking us in before we've, you know, explored the master plan. And also, I mean, let's be honest, as much as people have said that, you know, Portland Square is too small, I think that honestly 350 people capacity with the ability to, you know, possibly move into the street the way they do in Wilmette is still a viable option. I think a lot of the events that take place in the lot swim in that large space. They're just, it's a totally outsized space for the kind of events, you know, that we have. And we have struggled, you know, you could say, oh, different events. It's too large a space. That's what, no matter what, you know, lineup you have, it's just too large a space.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, appreciate it. Kim?
Yeah, I agree with what Councilmember Ross has said. I appreciate all the work that's gone into this proposal. At last week's council workshop, we went through the finances in advance of the beginning of the budget planning process for next year, and we are projecting tax increases in the coming year and probably the following years, based on current expenses and the current capital plans. And as you said, this is not included in the capital plan. This is a large expense. It's a large number of parking spaces that we would lose. We have a fire station to rebuild. We've got the Public Works building that's going to be a priority and likely a significant cost. And then we have things coming up. You know, we're currently working on the senior center. We've got the library project coming up. There's a lot of capital projects in the works. I wish we had unlimited funds, but we don't. And so this concerns me. I agree that Port Clinton could be activated better, and that if we need to close off the street or the parking lot for events here and there, that would make sense without a permanent build-out. But I just don't see the ability to spend this kind of money for an event space outside in the, that probably won't be used for several months of the year.
Thanks. Andres?
Yeah, I have some comments to make. Regarding the funding, though, listening to Gita's, based on best practices and what has been available around, if there's a possibility of getting up to 80% funding, I think that's material. So we're not talking about bringing it out of our operating costs. So I think that could be an important, qualifier. If we answer the question about the use of the space, and then we say, okay, how will we pay for it? We may, as a collective, say, well, if it's out of our pocket 100%, maybe that's a no-go. But if we have a plan and we realistically come and say, yeah, that 80% has been verified, it's very likely we can get 60, 80% of it, then we're talking about a very different investment on our part. So I think we need to put that in context. Now, let me argue the other case, because it was a 100% negative case made, and I respect that, but there was nothing positive in your narrative. And so I want to look at the last 4 years of the work of the staff and the CODA and actually City Council as we've been moving this in a very careful way and doing piloting. I mean, we piloted 2 years, and that was the whole point of testing it. And I think a proof of concept is that at 50,000 people, and I do not question that number, is over a 2-year period, that is a pretty substantial thing, with 50,000 people showing up to a blacktop parking lot with portalets and no shade. That, I think, is a proof of concept that the city of Highland Park, the residents, which, by the way, the majority that were there were residents, and we had many visitors. So it's not doing this only for the visitors. I think it is doing for our people, as well as owning to be a destination. So I want to make a statement here about imagination and creativity and urban planning. And, we have to deal with the footprint that we have. And we have the railroad, and the city is divided the way it is, and short of reconfiguring the entire downtown, how do we make it work as the best as possible? We don't have an east-west connection. We have a north-south space that is actually some imaginative things to be done there. And I think about comparable spaces, and even though I'm going to mention something that is of a different scale, and ours is a nano version, I think about Millennium Park. And I also think about Central Park. These are really well, beautiful designed green spaces that I've done in the middle of the city, in the middle of retail, middle of residents, that are become destinations for people from around the world. And let's use Millennium Park, because it's down the street. A public-private partnership, government put in money, there were grants, there was donors. It was a really successful, public partnership of the best kind that made it affordable, by the way. And there, I think there's parallels. It was an ugly space. It was a hole in the ground with railroad tracks in the middle of it, and they covered up with a park. So that dealt with a major gash, if you will, in the landscape of that city. And what were its principles? Beautiful, green, meandering, community gathering, full of art,
Which one are you talking about?
Millennium Park.
Oh, okay.
Right, a bench, a gathering place for an outdoor gathering. In Chicago, so they have the whole year-round weather issue that we have up here, 30 miles north. So, but it still is an attractive place all times of the seasons. They have a water feature, and it's sustainable, and it's green, and it brings, oxygen to the city. And in talking to the people that were behind Millennium Park and the people in the city, they will say that the economic revitalization of Michigan Avenue south of the Chicago River is due to that beautiful space that has attracted millions of people from around. Now, we're not going to attract millions, but we're going to attract tens of thousands of people from around here. So I see that green art, gathering place, beautiful, aesthetically pleasing, is a very attractive thing on its own merits. It's good for our residents. It's attractive. We want to be a destination for visitors. We can, when talking to the business owners, they cannot survive on only residents' spend. The restaurants can't survive on it, the retailers can't. It needs residents and it needs visitors. And communities that cannot bring people and become a destination from 10, 15, even 20 miles out are not going to thrive. And the instigation, and as part of this, it's not only the beauty part of it, but also it's the economic development. We have to create reasons for people to come from far away and from nearby, as well as provide for our residents. So I think that one final thing I'll say in terms of, I think, what is the brand of Highland Park? It's a Tree City, USA. We're talking about maybe being an arts city, whether it's formally branded that way, but at least it is like the way organically. It is sort of architecturally interesting. It is emphasis on the ravines and the lake. And so this design reflects the green, the water, the undulating ways of the landscape of Ravinia and other parts of Highland Park. I think it reflects our brand. And if you put a musical space there and a gathering space and an outdoor space here, it reflects the ethos of Ravinia Festival, it reflects the ethos of our beaches and our parks. So I think that from an urban planning perspective, a community vibrancy perspective, an economic development perspective, an artistic manifestation, and an imaginative and bold vision for this kind of investment is well worth the collective monies that I think we can pull together between what we have in our treasury as well as what we can gain through grants and other means. So I'm fully supportive of this, whether it's a phased 1 or 2, we can debate and discuss it, but right now we're trying to discuss whether it's that we want to use this parking lot as a space to bring in a park. I will trade a big, huge, low-use parking lot for a beautiful park with music that gathers people and it inspires people and is imaginative and is reflective of our brand and the kind of place that I think we want to be. And that will inject economic vitality as well as artistic expression and imagination to our city.
Okay, thank you. Yumi has some responses, I
I
believe.
do, and I really appreciate the passion you have. I mean that quite sincerely. For the passion that you speak about this project with. I mean, interestingly, and you mentioned the Millennium Park to me earlier today, and I was a little short on time. We did talk a bit, but I didn't get into it more. I mean, for one thing, it has the Art Institute on one end of it, and it's a very different site. So much more program, and a bit program I'm somewhat familiar with. My roommate, apartment mate, good friend from design school was the chief designer of it, Matthew Urbanski of Michael Van Valkenburg Landscape Architects, and I do know some of the people involved beyond Matthew with developing that park on top of parking below it. But there's so much more program there. There's this ribbon of ice.
Wait, I'm sorry. We want to hear from others.
Andres, I'm running the meeting, and I want to hear from Yumi. I appreciate your input, and we'll let everybody have a chance to talk.
I won't, but that's a good reminder to cut myself a little bit short there. But there's so much more program there. There isn't the possibility, to do that, and it has an entirely different, siting. And as far as the 50,000 people, visitors, I mean, I'm guessing there was a good way of counting that. I mentioned it to James Lynch, the president of the Arts Center, who said he was there for most of the events. This summer, he said he can't imagine how there were 5,000 people for the 10 events for each of them. It obviously couldn't have been the case because the artisan market we know were very poorly attended, but the others would have had to pick up those people. I do love the passion. I just wish that passion could be directed. I don't know why we're not talking about investing in Port Clinton Square, why we aren't exploring it, why we couldn't, say, get an RFP for whether it's Lakota Group or another design group, whatever the city sees fit, to be exploring that. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. And I'll just share with you, I'm looking at Carolyn, we're having pictures of the screen that was gonna rotate, right? Remember from like, I don't know, when Dave was the city manager and they were gonna have a stage and they were gonna have a shade and then it was gonna rotate and things were gonna happen over there, and that's somewhere on the shelf, and that was $2 million, and at the time we were like, whoa, that's way too much money, so here we are, so, but,
But you know, the Placer AI was able to come very close to our hand-counted numbers
okay,
for the lot events.
okay, great. I know Tony wanted to say something, I know Annette wanted to say something, and I know dinner is like in a minute, so, if you could share your thoughts, that'd be great, thank
And
you.
I'll try to be brief. First of all, I do want to express my appreciation for the Lakota group. You've worked with Highland Park before, and I think your work is great. You addressed the task that you were asked to address and expressed a number of different uses that could occur in the lot. My initial reaction as you were speaking is it would be impossible to do all those at once, obviously, but I don't think you were encouraging that. You were discussing some of the opportunities that present themselves. For me, however, a lot of the suggested activities in the lot are inconsistent with the overarching desire to have a space to go to and to relax and to just be and exist, which I hear from people in Highland Park is something we want, and that's a park. And most of what has been described to us as successful business district centers are parks. They're not lots, and we would have to convert this really into a park, and that wouldn't be consistent with music. That many people are going to destroy grass. You can't have that. The cost issue, I understand that we can qualify for a lot of different kinds of grants that might support these uses. We can qualify for a lot of different grants that support very different uses, like residential developments, which leads me to my concern, which is that modern urban planning, in terms of supporting a downtown business district, is consistent with what we've done with recent zoning changes, which is to envelop our downtown business district with local residents, to drive more people into the business district. I don't know that we necessarily want to turn the lot into residences because we have the difficulty of being close to the train tracks, but we have some residences in Highland Park, some multifamily developments that are right on the tracks, and that is something that perhaps we ought to consider. I'm not comfortable with these uses because this isn't really the heart of our downtown. In the staff report, that phrase, heart of the downtown, is used, but it isn't really. We are unfortunately divided by train tracks. We have a large business district on each side of the tracks, which has a need to connect with each other, and that connection is down central. But placing a big space like this for this kind of invited use on one side or the other of the tracks is not necessarily going to solve our retail concerns, if indeed we have them. Our retail sales tax has largely recovered, I think, since the economic downturn and the pandemic. And lastly, this is sort of inconsistent with what I am comfortable with in terms of what the city ought to do. I understand vibrancy is one of our core values, but I'm not sure that creating an entire event space that is also trying to be a park is really consistent with that.
Annette?
Okay, so mine won't be as articulate and probably won't even be as ordered because I've just been taking some notes. First of all, I really want to thank staff because I thought this was a great report. Not only did Lakota do what we wanted to do, I actually think they achieved it, but my goals are slightly different because I believe that the phased in, the first part, is really what I would like to see before moving anywhere else, because I don't want to lose 100 parking spots, but I want to see how it would affect downtown were we to lose, say, 60 and go from there. I viewed this as a project that is bridging, and to use your phrase quite correctly, the heart of downtown. And in a way, it was the only way I've ever seen that we could bring more of the east side, where we get a lot of complaints that people feel like they're sort of, their neighbor's the lake and that's all they've got. And that this would sort of bridge that because there would be such vitality right in there. When I look at this and the staff time that's been put into this, I think they did their jobs in terms of research. And what I really liked about this, it wasn't just manning an event when people were standing in the lot and counting. It was mingling and getting a feel for it and talking to people. And frankly, we asked a lot of people a lot of things, and they told us stuff. They said, we can't believe that Highland Park wouldn't have bathrooms. They said, we can't believe it's just a lot. Where's the green? And I think your plan listened to what the people said, and it really came up with a lot of the things. The park, I view this as park and sitting space. 90% of the time, it's not going to be event space. So for me to see this huge parking lot, of which now 2/3 would be a park, 80% of the time, and there is sitting space. I love the way that it curves around and you can sit on those low-rising kind of gardens. I'm always plunking myself down because I'm running right up again. And what worked at the lot was the fact that there was music, but there wasn't shade, and there wasn't a lot of places to sit. So I don't care if my view is obstructed when there's an event going on, but I do care that I have a place to plunk down, move to the next area. And my home, I have rooms that are gardens. And when I worked with my landscape architect, one thing she really taught me, a Highland Park woman, was that you want to have these different rooms where people can be interested and interesting. And I don't know, I fully respect that you spoke to vendors. I spoke to vendors who said, this enhances my business, because when they couldn't find food to eat in the lot, they went to my restaurant. And initially they were very skeptical of it. But then what they found is that the foot traffic overflowed, and that's exactly what we want to do. And frankly, I have to tell you, I'm not from Highland Park. And I so respect these people who are 2 and 3 generations. I'm from Ohio. And when I tell people I'm from Highland Park, it has this wonderful reputation. And so to me, to be able to say, well, there's also, in addition to Ravinia, in addition to the lake, in addition to all the wonderful things we have, there's this area where we actually can sit around and listen to music, and it's vibrant. And so I think we will bring in more tourists, and I think that visitors are necessary to our economy. I know we've improved. We've got a great community. We increased the foot traffic with a lot of the development we did, and I think it's time to move to the next phase. So it's not just about building more, and I love what we've done with Albion 1 and Albion 2, and we've brought in additional families, and it's necessary. But now let's keep them there. We need to give them places to go and places to sit. So for me, Port Clinton is way too small. I go to every festival, and when it's a big, successful festival, you cannot fit people in there. We need more than that here. 2nd Street. We're spending the same amount on 2nd Street, and we're getting pavement, and it's going to be beautiful, and I can't wait. But if we're going to get grants on this, and Gita, I'm sorry, but I've never seen anybody better at getting grants. And we would have to put you to the task, even if we're
Changing
just
her
doing
name
the
to
phase
Midas.
1. But I am not looking at this as a $6 million project, because I would not be in favor of that either. But if this ends up being closer to a $1.5 million or $1 million project, to me it's a no-brainer to bring a park in. And I view this as a park, again, where for 10% of the time, we're using it for one of our, and I have to tell you, when we lost vibrancy as one of our pillars, I was sad, because that is a 10A that I feel is important.
Me too.
But I think that in bringing in the things that we've done with economic development, we were looking at a real need that we have. But I don't want to lose the vibrancy, and I don't think we will, but I think we can enhance it without losing that. Professionals to help with design. I think it's key that we've had the best already designing it, but I also want to see the advisory groups and the people that we have in this town contribute to this in the same way as development from PDC or CAG or any of these groups. Shade and bathrooms, I'm sorry to keep coming back to really practical things. That's what people wanted. I mean, I would stay there for 3 or 4 hours because you know how long I can dance for, and I was ready to pass out. And those were the two things that people said. They said, bring us into it. Your sidewalks are bringing us in. Your green is giving us somewhere to sit, and you're protecting us. I love this. I don't love it for the whole thing. I love it for the phase in, and then I want to reevaluate. And by the way, every town I visit now, they have public bathrooms. So to put in some infrastructure that one would say, oh, it's taking away from a parking lot, what if we just go back to a parking lot? This is something I think our town needs. And I know it sounds crazy to be talking about bathrooms.
No, but
But it's kind of, you know, as someone who's always running for one, I really like the idea of having a public bathroom in downtown Highland Park, and if it's clean with toilet paper, I will be so happy. So anyhow, I think between the green and the bathrooms and all the wonderful different types of entertainment, whether that's sitting on a bench with my book, or sitting on the edge of a flower bed with my book, or listening to great music, I love this idea. So
Thank you.
I want to thank all of you.
You have comments, but then it's also 10 minutes past when we're supposed to have dinner. So if I could ask you to keep them brief, and then we will come back to this, because this isn't a one-and-done conversation, so we'll
Got it.
give you the heads up.
So I just want to address a couple of different points. You know, Councilman Bloomberg's point about, you know, it's not compatible to have a music place and a park. Well, Ravinia Festival is a park, and they have tens of thousands of people every single day. And
Bigger.
well, right, but it's, let's say, this will be fewer people, and it's still a park and a musical venue. Further, to Council Member Littleworth's point, 80% or even 90% of a year-round day, it's not going to be full of events. It's going to be a park where people will hang out to do many different things. So, and you know, we can make an argument that bringing in more density to that area, to apartment buildings, might be preferable. But think about all the residential buildings that be filled in Central Park. It would destroy, you know, the power of greenery in the middle of a city. So what makes a city attractive is not only the infrastructure, but also the open areas, and I think we would agree to that. Just a couple other thoughts. I heard many positive points of view from business owners who grew into it. They were skeptical, they were resistant, and over time, spending time with them, I started to see the impact, so I would not have the same sound bites. And the difference between qualitative anecdotes and quotes and the quantitative data that we're starting to gather, that one table, mini table that you had showing that there was an increase in foot traffic to our downtown area and the pace of a lot of events is critical. And I think it's the city's responsibility to increase foot traffic here through events. And it's business owners' responsibility to take advantage of the increased fish in the pond to make sure they can reel them into their stores.
By being open when those events are occurring. for
Right, and
starters.
that is our responsibility to coordinate. I
Yeah.
agree. But I think the fact that we can bring more feet on the street, let's coordinate with the stores, and then they can do their job to get them into the stores.
Okay,
And why not?
I really think we need to eat dinner, because we have to start our next meeting in 15 minutes. But I'm happy to say that we'll continue this conversation, so I'm going to urge you to write down what you're thinking, because this is a good place, I think, for us to continue the
But
conversation.
Mayor, do you have something to say?
One little piece that the Chamber of Commerce and business owners, beyond what we think we know at this point, I feel like there's more to learn in terms of data. Anyway, that's it.
Okay, great. So with that, yes, I do, but we're going to eat dinner. So I will be back and share my opinion at the next conversation. With that, we are seeking a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.